Hey HTDA and welcome to Terra Invicta, a grand strategy game that's coming out soon and currently has a demo available on Steam next fest. So let's dive into it. So I'm currently showing the intro, which has no narration just yet, so it's not like I blocked out the sound, the music or whatever. There's simply not that much going on just yet. But basically the idea behind this game is that suddenly aliens crash landed on our planet and well, they seem to have an interest in the Earth. And we're going to play as the Resistance in a demo where we're trying to resist the alien invasion, which not the most original, but definitely the most straightforward type of faction to play. So I can imagine why they decided to pick that one for the demo. But there is actually a lot of different factions in the game that you can also opt for. And those factions can also, for example, try to support the aliens or try to serve the aliens, etc. And there's actually quite a few different angles you can take when it comes to actually working against or with the aliens and the approach you take in that. So there is really something for everyone, I think, in that regard in terms of the factions you can pick from. But for now, we are just going to play with the Resistance. Now I can't show you a full playthrough just yet because as you can see on the screen the demo stops after 7 years, but that actually allows us to get pretty far and well, it's just going to be really fun. And yeah, let's just take it to the world. There is a lot going on. First of all, a UFO crashed on Earth. It is apparently in Russia, so we can say take me there, and then we get a lot of pop-ups around what we're supposed to do. There's a lot of tutorials in the demo actually as well. That's really nicely done. There is a lot going on in this game, and I actually want to kind of save the full detailed explanation for a let's play or a couple of guides, so I'm just going to show you the most important stuff right now. So the basic idea behind the start of this game is that we start out on a world map, and as you can see it's a realistic world map with all the countries that you would expect, etc, etc. And right now there is apparently a UFO crash in Russia. Now, what that does for us is that we know there's something of interest here. We don't really know what, and we don't really have control over anything in the world just yet. But we know that we want to start working on that. And the way we do that is by using our counselors. So right now we have two of them. We have Kabongo over here, who is an activist. And we have Meva over here, that is a scientist. And that actually determines what they're good at, but it also determines what skill set they get. So for example, Meva over here has different skills than Kabongo. So Kabongo, for example, can try to control a nation or overthrow a government or campaign for us in order to increase our popularity. It can increase unrest, which makes it easier to overthrow, etc. All of these are tied to a certain type of currency. As you can see, we need to spend some to increase our probability of success. And we will also have different ways to generate that. So that actually allows you to specialize in certain types of actions and a certain way you want to take control over factions, the world, etc., over specific resource points. As you can see on the map right here, for example, this is a resource region that actually gives a bonus to the nation's economic priority. And so on. There's different types of those control points on the map that affect what you would want to prioritize. There's different armies on the map as well, and all of that is really important in terms of kind of strategizing where you want to go and how you want to approach that. Now this is actually really interesting considering we have Ukraine here and there's actually some armies in Ukraine, so I'm not entirely sure if that's intentional by the developers or not. Sensitive topics, so I'll stay away from that, but it's interesting to see this happening in that way. What's also interesting, by the way, is that every time I seem to fire up a game in this demo, I actually get a Dutch starting counselor, which is, as you know, really appropriate considering I'm Dutch. So I'm not sure if that's just random luck or if that's intentional as well. If it's all intentional, well, compliments to the developers because that's a nice touch. Anyway, counselors, we are going to do a couple of things. So for example, when I first selected this counselor, it was a pop-up. I don't think it's on the video, but there was actually a suggestion to go into Russia and take control over a certain resource point. For example, this one over here is a core economic region, and that will actually allow us to get some bonuses. Now, in order to do that, we can control nation. This is an action that we can use to gain an open control point in a nation. As you can see, some of these things are grayed out just because we don't actually have an option anywhere in the world to use that skill, but we can try to control a nation. So if we do that in Moscow, Russia over here, we actually only get a 3% chance of success. Now, we do have some influence to spend, and as we do that, we actually increase the probability of success. Now, honestly, I'm not really liking a 14% chance of success, so let's see if we can increase our chances somewhere else. If you zoom out, you can actually see on the map what our success rates might be. So there's a couple of regions where we actually have a lot higher chance of success. For example, Mongolia seems to be very favorable in terms of trying to get some control over here. It's probably not as rich of a region either, and you can take a look at all the different stats basically on a region. This goes again into a lot of detail, but for the sake of this demo, I will just kind of boost our success rate maybe to 85%. That should do. And then we click Control Nation,
Taking control,
and Meva will be sent over to do exactly that. In order to help you decide what you're going to do and where you are going to do it, there's a couple of overviews to make your life a little easier. So right now it's set to the nation, so you can really tell what nations is which. It's a little bit more convenient to kind of track where certain nations are in the world if you know your geographics, but for example, you might be interested in taking control of some of the larger nations, so you select it by population. You could also look at income level, so you can see which are the richer and which are the poorer countries in the world. Pretty much as you would expect it from the real world, by the way, so that's a really very realistic, but it's also really convenient if you're trying to do a certain type of action. Control points are very important as well, so what regions have control points and what type of control points do they have. Military tech level, very important as well. I mean, if you want to take control of an army, you better know where those armies are in the world. And the income boost is also relevant. Basically, which zones would benefit you the most in terms of boosting your income. Unrest is important as well. That makes it easier to overthrow a government. So, you can actually use actions to increase unrest as well. So, for example, over here, in Libya, we might be in a good position to increase unrest even further and thereby overthrow the government a little easier, rather than starting to work on, let's say, the Benelux, because it's only at a 6% level right now, so overthrowing someone over there is going to be a lot tougher than somewhere else. Similarly, we have faction popularity, which is really important as well. If you want to have people on your side, you better be popular. Again, apparently Libya is some country that really likes the resistance, but there's also other countries where we're not as much liked. So apparently in the US, for example, people do not like resisting aliens all that much just yet. That can always change, but it's important to realize where to start with your control. Faction control, as you can see, we are not in control of anything just yet, but there are some other important marks on the map, and of course the other factions will also start taking control of zones, so that will change really quickly over the course of the game. Now, terrain kind of speaks for itself, and then we're back to the nations, but it's a really easy way to tell where you're going. Speaking of where you're going, so far you might be thinking, okay, typical grand strategy, so you have the world map and you do stuff on that map and you try to take control over the world. That's not quite where we're stopping, because we are fighting off space aliens, and that means we get to zoom out and we can actually start colonizing and defending our solar system as well. And as I zoom out, I think you can now kind of see what scale the game can be at, because we have quite a lot of different planets, we have asteroids all over the place, we'll be building space stations, etc. Not from the first moment of the game, but that is definitely part of the game, and space battles are included as well. So not maybe your typical grand strategy, it's kind of XCOM meets something like Europe Universalis or something like that, but those types of game, but in a very different shell, and to be honest, a shell I really like. Now, of course, you're not stuck with those two counselors that you started out with. No, you get to recruit your own entire council of the Illuminati, or at least that's how it works in my mind. So you can actually customize the ones you already have if that's what you want to do. You can actually upgrade them at some point as well. You can augment them. That's how we're calling it in this game. But customizing them, you can change their looks, you can change their gender even. You can pretty much just get the team that you want. You're not necessarily stuck with whatever the game happens to generate for you at the start of the game. However, you are stuck with what they are. So in terms of, in this case, a scientist with certain skills and missions and attributes, etc., that works still the way it is going to work always. But you do get some control over who else you add to the team. So there's a lot of different classes. There's the tech moguls, who are basically, well, you know, some famous names of people that would fall in that category, I suppose, and that have a specific way of contributing to your cause, but also a way of approaching how they influence the world. But you also have evangelists, public figures who have a lot of influence. You have inspectors who are kind of more of a military type of approach. You have journalists, etc. So you can really shape your gameplay once again around how you want to approach and what fits the faction that you are currently playing. Now again, it's really important who you bring to the team, because their skills will actually determine what you can do. So for example, the two guys I currently have, or the girl and guy that I already have, cannot actually inspect alien activity, but my new recruit Jemin Ko has the ability to investigate alien activity. We happen to know that there is an apparent UFO crash over here, so we are going to send him to investigate that. In the meanwhile, we're also going to use Kabongo to see if we can get some more people on our side as well. This game also has an interesting approach to research. So there is global research. These are research projects that everyone will be contributing towards, but whoever contributes towards it to the most when it is completed will actually get to pick whatever you are going to research as a global community next, but they will also get bonuses to that are specific to the research you just unlocked. At the same time, you also have council engineering projects, which are basically things that you can pick and will only influence your faction. Now, as you can see, you have the option to research more at some point, but that will require us to have orgs, or organizations abbreviated, to work for us, and that we can employ to do exactly that. Or we also can build some modules as one of our habitats that allow us to engineer some more stuff. That's all later in the game, but as you can see, you can set your priority, how you want to spend your research. We are generating quite a bit per day. If I would set it like this, we are basically splitting 25% of all our efforts equally between all these projects. But I can also say, well, no, I don't want that. I actually want to go fully into this and a little bit into that, and then you can split it. And if I, of course, disable all of this, I would not actually be contributing to the global research at all. I would just be focusing on my own stuff. Might be a little bit overkill considering how much you need to complete this, but just as an example, you can really kind of fine-tune what you are contributing towards and how much you are contributing towards that. And there is a lot more to kind of track, figure out, etc. This is going to be a very interesting game for you if this is the type of gameplay you like, where there's so much going on. You can really figure out all the tiny details what people are trying to do. So for example, over here I have the faction overview. We have all the other different factions in the game. Some of them have sort of clear goals, of course. Humanity first, I can imagine what they will be trying to do. Same for the Academy, the Protectorate, etc. Project Exodus is apparently a faction that's probably going to try and leave the planet. The Servants are probably in favor of the aliens taking over as our overlords and things like that. Now specifically, we are going to try to figure out who their counselors are, what their resources are about, what they are trying to do, who they are related with, and what technologies they have researched. Now similarly, we also have, of course, the aliens. Currently we have no tracked aliens, and we only know that there is a site where an UFO went down, but they will also be coming in with fleets, habitats, and things like that. So a lot of interesting things to really track and figure out what we are going to do about that, because after all, we are the resistance at the moment. We also have this on the left, this notification path, where we apparently found out that Project Exodus as well as the Academy have these space stations flying around our planet already. We don't have that, so that's also very interesting in terms of gameplay. All the different factions start out with different types of situations. We also have the notification that we started the demo. That's really cool. But right now, the main thing we are trying to do is start our assignments, our missions. Now, we assigned a couple of people to do some stuff. We can confirm those assignments, and then the idea is to unpause the game. Now, honestly, even if you just have the game playing, you can just do that, because as you can see, we literally have seconds passing by. And at this rate, we are going to be here forever at life speed, waiting for our missions to complete. So, of course, we want to speed things up a little bit. And we can do that, and we can do so very significantly. And I really like how this looks. I mean, it's just the animations, I know, but it's just so fun to see these space stations flying around like this. And as you can see, we now have hours flying by. On the left hand side, we have notifications popping up, and if there's something really important, we will know about it. So we can speed up the time even further, and right now, for example, we get an operations section report. In this case, the first event that pops up is the UN Security Council meeting. And as always, China, Russia and the United States are not agreeing on whatever is happening in the world, accusing each other of hiding knowledge about alien crashes and things like that. Yeah, very interesting, but we get to pick what we do about that. So we can either remain in the shadows, nothing happens. It's the most boring option, but it's also the safest option, because the other two options are quietly steering support to ourselves. That will actually give us quite a bit of influence. So this is this resource over here, which is going to be very useful to affect other things in the world. We also get a small public opinion boost, so people will know about us and also like us as a result of that. But at the same time, we are exposing our organization to the other organizations in the world, so that's not necessarily a good thing. There's a more extreme version of that, where we really say, okay guys, this is what we're about, vote for us. And we get a huge amount of influence, but we also get a huge amount of public opinion boost, so that's all very good. But at the same time, a great deal of information about our faction is going to be exposed to our enemies. So this is really kind of a high risk, high reward type of situation, and decisions like this is something you will be making all the time. So are you going to stay in the shadows? Are you going to go kind of the high risk, high reward route, or somewhere in between? It is completely up to you. We're also going to have to deal with the other factions, and right now, for example, we are encountering the Servants that has determined the alien are of divine origin and has declared itself its heralds and defenders. So yeah, they're apparently here to cleanse our sick world. They might not be wrong about that, honestly, but hey, we are the Resistance, so we are probably not going to get along with these guys very much. And then there's guys like the Academy that are basically about, as long as we understand the aliens properly and we just explain it well enough, they will see reason and we're going to be just very nice friends. Yeah, once again, not entirely sure about that, but it's one approach, and it's also going to be very interesting to play these guys at some point. We will also get notifications about our agents completing missions for us. And right now, for example, Kabongo over here was sent to Amsterdam, of course to Amsterdam, to make sure we become a little bit more popular. And he was successful about that. And the way that works is you get the success chance, you get a random roll, and as long as your roll is under your success chance level, you will have a success. So right now, we boosted the Resistance popularity by 11%. Now this is a variable outcome, so depending on your role, at least I think it depends on your role, it can be higher or lower. The closer it is to the higher rate, it's probably going to be lower impact, and vice versa. So this is actually a pretty good role, and you can instantly say, okay, just repeat the mission, or even keep doing this permanently, whatever you want, or you can just say, you go do something else now. But this is I think this is a really good quality of life thing, that you have the repeat mission button, for example, over here, so that if you have a specific goal, you might want to, especially in campaigns like this, you might want to do that several times over, and this just makes things a lot more quick and convenient to do. So I really like how they developed that specific part of the game. Very early on, you also get to kind of set the direction of what your team is going to do by selecting your management team, and I really like the little nuances on how you select these things. It really gives flavor to the game. But basically what you get to choose here is what type of income you get a little bit of a boost in, which is tied to the type of management team you have. So for example, in the case of the Resistance, I think it makes sense that we are mainly officers and operators, and it will actually allow us to get a higher ops income. Basically allowing us to more easily overthrow and take control of nations and things like that. But you could also opt, for example, for financiers and investors, so then you would get a higher monthly money income, or scientist that basically gives you a research income, etc., etc. So there's a lot of different directions that you can take, and I don't think necessarily any of them are wrong, but it will definitely determine on how you are going to approach a certain playthrough. Once again, I just really like these types of choices, and it makes it really interesting, and also makes different playthroughs really unique, because even choices like this will have a huge influence on the first steps you take in the game. And one of the first objectives you're going to get is to go and investigate the alien crash, and that's exactly what we've done, of course. And despite heavy security, we were able to obtain some surveillance records of the crash site, as well as a small quantity of debris. We should have a project ready for our research shortly. And in order to, because we completed this objective, we also get some influence as well as some research, so that will give us a nice little boost. Taking all these actions and prodding around in the world is obviously also going to get you noticed at some point. And in this case, our counselor was spotted, and that exposes this counselor to the other factions. Now, counselors are not necessarily going to be loyal. They can be double agents, for example. They can even turn to the other side. And if your other factions know who is on your team, they might try to convince them to join their team instead. So generally speaking, you want your counselors to operate in the dark as much as possible, at least early on, so you don't have those problems. Again, a very interesting kind of spying game going on over here, which you can solve by using the go to ground mission. That basically means that your counselors are going to go undercover for a little while, wait until the heat wears off, and then go back into business. Now, of course, success is not guaranteed, not even when you have an 84% chance to actually be successful, which sounded pretty good to me, but if you don't roll well enough, you're still going to fail. So, I know it's going to be tempting to kind of just save scum the hell out of that. Of course, in the demo, you can't currently save, so you're going to be stuck with whatever outcomes you get. But I also highly recommend, if you're going to play this game for real, just go with whatever the game gives you in terms of wins and losses, because that actually makes it very interesting. If you're just going to re-roll every time to see if you can get a positive outcome or take different actions and see what that takes you, that's not how you're... At least I don't think that's how you're supposed to play this game. But it's very interesting to see what happens and how you can react to those situations. It is good to know that the missions are actually executed in rounds, each round lasting about a week, and that means that regardless of the length of your mission, it will always take one full week for everyone to complete their missions, or not complete the missions and be a failure in that regard, but at least you can basically assign all your counselors to a mission every week. And that does mean you need to be very strategic about what you're going to do in terms of missions, because everyone else also gets only a few missions per week, and that means that going for a specific zone or faction, or trying to push back or trying to capture an enemy counselor can have a huge impact on how the game goes, if you're successful or if you're not, or if your opponent is outmaneuvering you and stuff like that. So once again, it's really something to think about, really strategize about, sit back for a moment to see, okay, where am I going to go next? What makes sense? What is everyone else doing? But also, what am I going to do? And that will actually help me forward the cause of our faction. Last but definitely not least, you also get to build ships and then take control of them in epic space battles. In the current demo, the space battles are limited to 3 ships on each side, so we currently have 3 of our own ships and 3 alien ships in battle, but of course in the actual game you'll be able to scale up your fleets quite a bit more than this. Now you can actually completely take control over your ships. You can decide what they're going to attack, how they're going to attack, where they're going to fly. Well, basically anything you can imagine about ships, including ramming speed for some reason on top of spaceships. So you can even just ram them into the enemy if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to do this, you actually do have the option to set AI control. So you can just say, okay guys, just have the AI do their thing, and I'm just going to do that to show you what combat kind of looks like, and then things will take care of themselves. Now you can see the trajectory, there's power, there's shields. Over here, there's basically battery life, so upgrading your ships and making sure there is enough things going on is definitely going to be worth it. Now, initially, the speed will go at a snail's pace, but if you speed it up, just like in the world overview, your ships will start doing a lot of things. And right now, for some reason, the AI is really liking kind of twirling your ships, and I am not entirely sure if that's intended behavior or if that's just a little bit buggy in this demo. But anyway, as you can see, there's lasers, there's things like rockets and things like that going on. So there's a lot of fun to be had in this demo as well as in the game in general. And I think actually my ships are kind of underpowered compared to what the aliens are doing. So I am hopelessly losing this battle. But I do hope this gives you kind of an overview about how this game is going to look in the final version. Now let me know in the comments if you like this game, if you plan on playing this game, trying it out, or even if it's not for you. I would very much like to hear that. And I think the tutorial is now actually telling me that I lost all my ships. That's a little bit late for that. Anyway, let me know in the comments about your views on this game. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.